morning, welcome back to Spirit of Scotland 1314, and this is a special day today, following on the back of the film that we've done on the Earl of Atholl and his raid on the Cambuskenneth Abbey. I've come back down to the Abbey Ford on the south side of the Forth, because today's quite a special day. This is the 2nd of April 2026, and tonight there will be a full moon. So in other words, we get spring tides at full moon time, don't we? That's when we get the maximum height in the tide and the lowest. Why is that significant? Well, at the Abbey Ford, you're only ever going to cross it at low tide, and the lower the better. So when we go down today and have a look, we'll get an idea of just how low the water gets at Cambuskenneth Abbey Ford, and you'll see what the Earl of Atholl and his men would have had to try to cross at a period that we've determined just after midnight on the 23rd, 24th of June during the battle. So exciting times, great wee day, add another wee bit to the grand picture of the Battle of Bannockburn. So let's go and have a wee look down at the Abbey Ford and see what we can find. Here we are at the Abbey Ford. What a fantastic day. If you've got time on your hands and you're interested as I am in your history, get yourself down here. It is stunning. Let me just turn around and show you what we are looking at here. What we can get in one frame is incredible. Hope you can see that there. In the background left, you'll see Stirling Castle perched on its rock. And directly in front of me, you will see Cambuskenneth Abbey, formerly inhabited by Arusian monks, a French sort of monastery, and then followed on to the Augustines. And to the right hand side, perched on the Abbey Craig, the magnificent Wallace Monument. And directly in front of you there is the Abbey Ford. This is the Abbey Ford at low tide, on a spring tide with a full moon tonight. Now we've actually had quite a bit of heavy rain recently, so the river, even at low tide at the moment, is probably a wee tad higher than it normally is, but it still demonstrates how low the water gets here. And I'm not sure if the ford back in medieval days was just a natural ford, or whether it had been part engineered, whether gravel banks had been built up to help people cross it, because people have been crossing here for millennia. Let's see if I can get down a little bit closer. I need to watch myself because it's quite treacherous in these banks here. Right, here we go. Let's see. Oh jeez. Okay, I think that's as far as I dare to go. It gets quite muddy and slippy, and the banks are quite crumbly, so you do need to take care if you come down here onto the banks. So there in front of you, you see the Abbey Ford, the Wallace Monument in the background. And I'll just swing around and bring into view Cambuskenneth Abbey there, and Stirling Castle. Where do you see such history, such a timeline of history, as you do in one place right in front of you here? It is magnificent. So let me put the drone up and we'll talk through the area of which we are, and it'll give you an idea where to go if you're coming to visit. There we see Cambuskenneth Abbey and its wider environment. In the background we see Stirling Castle, perched high on its rock. And in the top left there, you can just see the meandering Forth. Flying over Stirling County Cricket Club. Is this the route the Abbey road would have taken to join up with the ford. And there on the right, Meadow Farm. One would think an ancient road must have existed in this area to join up with the ford and the Abbey. There we just begin to see the shallowness of the River Forth at the Abbey ford. And here we are flying downriver at the Abbey ford, and you can see just how shallow it is on a low spring tide. Remembering that Atholl crossed 5 days before the lowest tides. And here we are. This may be the route that Atholl took across the ford. Is this the scene he saw as he crossed? Once again, see how shallow it is here. There is a deeper channel towards the far bank that was dug out to aid the travel of small boats. Is this what Atholl seen as he stormed up the banking to raid the Abbey? Oh, the treachery. And a wider view of Meadow itself, once again, in the meandering loop of the River Forth. You can see the track around outside popular with dog walkers. And the scar down the middle left by power pylons. The area had been turned over to a refuse tip, but now lies as karstland. One can't help but think it would make a wonderful wildlife refuge if a little bit of attention was given to it. And once more we fly over Meadow Farm. As we approach the Abbey ford, with Cambuskenneth on the far bank, and Stirling Castle perched high on its rock. Let's take a walk over to Cambuskenneth Abbey and look at it from the other side. Here I am at Cambuskenneth Abbey, in the grounds where the Abbey, the cloisters once stood, but reduced to ruin now. Destroyed during the Reformation and plundered for building stone for other projects. But what an amazing place this is. Somewhere around here is a stone that marks the possible place of the burial of William Wallace's arm. Once had a mark that looked similar to a W on there. And quite fitting really, if it is buried there, in the distance overlooking it is the Wallace Monument. A fitting place for the burial of a patriot and a hero. As you can see, the walls are down to ground level almost. And here's the tomb, the grave of King James III, buried after he was apparently murdered at the Battle of Sauchieburn and reinterred. How incredible is that? The history here is incredible. I'm just going to take a walk down to the Abbey Ford area, but the history here is incredible. A monastery that was started by King David, and the Russian monks were here originally, and it was Augustinian monks. Robert the Bruce held a parliament here. He met here after the Battle of Bannockburn and divided up the spoils and the lands. Now this is me coming up to the banks of the River Forth. Now we were on the opposite bank earlier on at low tide, and it is now high tide. We've come round to the sort of north west bank, if you like. There you see in the distance the Wallace Monument sitting on the Abbey Craig. And the River Forth at high tide. Earlier on, we were on that opposite bank. This is where the ford, the Abbey Ford would have been, that the Earl of Atholl crossed with a body of men. As he led his murderous party across the ford sometime after midnight on the 23rd, early morning of 24th of June, plundered the supplies, killing some of the defenders there. A betrayal of Robert the Bruce on the eve of the second day of the battle. Shocking. But what a fantastic place to come and visit. So much history here in one small footprint of an area. Formed by King David I with the Russian monks. Later it was a meeting place after the Battle of Bannockburn, where Robert the Bruce divvied up the spoils and banished those who had fought against him. Later on, King James III was buried here after he was killed or murdered, as some would have it, at the Battle of Sauchieburn, and it was destroyed during the Reformation. It was actually destroyed before that. King Richard II, I think it was, of England came up and burned it down. It was rebuilt and then destroyed again in the 1560s at the Scottish Reformation, and then plundered for stone, which were taken to building projects in Stirling by the Earl of Mar, who was cursed for his part in doing that. So it's a fantastic area. Put it on your visit list. So much history here. Never ceases to amaze me. treachery and murder afoot.